KIRO, Seattle. This is COVID-19 Seattle. I'm Dave Ross.
And I'm Aaron Granillo.
Classrooms are closed for the rest of the school year.
Today, I'm extending the on-site instruction closure order.
But Governor Inslee says distance learning will continue.
Reaching the peak, the latest models show the state appears to be flattening the curve earlier than expected.
Boeing suspends production indefinitely.
For a lot of those machinists, they're going to face some pretty tough times coming up here starting Wednesday.
Why some Boeing workers might start filing for unemployment.
And as the CDC recommends people to wear masks in public, President Trump says he's not going to.
Stay right here. Classrooms and hallways at Washington schools will remain empty for the rest of the academic year.
I'm extending the on-site instruction closure order. All public and private K through 12 schools in our state will be ending, they'll be stopped from providing traditional in-person instruction through the end of this school year in June.
But Governor Jay Inslee says online and other remote learning methods will continue.
State Superintendent Chris Reykdal joined Governor Inslee for today's announcements, and he explained why these closures are being extended.
A rush back to school puts significant risk in learning continuity that at this time would not be better than the model we are developing and advancing at a distance. We do not want that curve to suddenly spike up because we acted too quickly to come back.
And he says all schools should return to normal by the fall. Now, this decision, Dave, affects more than 1 million school children and their parents. These closures were supposed to last until April 24th. That was about 6 weeks. Now we're talking an extra 2 months of learning at home for these students.
Right. The reader board outside the high school, we live right near a high school, has been saying, see you April 24th. That will now change. And there are a lot of issues with high schoolers and seniors, but both the superintendent of public instruction and Governor Inslee say that grades and GPA should not be affected. So I assume that means the state's going to consider changing graduation requirements for this year?
Yeah, the Reykdal did mention today that they are certainly considering waiving some of the, for instance, the credits needed to graduate. He was also asked about, are we now just going straight to a pass-fail system for the rest of the year? Sounds like for at least K through 8, yes, that will be the case. I don't think anybody has any concerns about students moving on there. The big question, though, now comes down to high schoolers because so many of these students rely on GPAs for scholarships. And if you're a junior trying to apply for college next year, what does that mean for SATs and ACTs? Well, those are now being postponed, at least for the time being. But yeah, I mean, GPA is a big question right now. Reykdal says he doesn't have anything that he can do from the state level. It's going to be up to each district to decide how they want to handle grading high school seniors in terms of will it be pass-fail or will there be some sort of way they can determine their GPAs going forward?
Yeah, that is tough, but I would have to think, and it's not like Washington State is the only state going through this, that he could issue some sort of letter explaining what the state's policy was, and you could include that with your college application. I'm pretty sure that most colleges don't want to disqualify an entire class of high school graduates because of the uncertainty caused by this one crisis.
Exactly. And Reykdal keeps pointing back to that exact point there, Dave, because we are not alone in this, right? The whole nation's education system just hit the pause button. So it's not like anybody in our state is falling behind further than anybody else. And I should also note that in terms of graduation ceremonies, both Inslee and Reykdal said that could be something they revisit in the future. Seniors could still walk later on this year. We'll have to see about that.
And, of course, online learning, I assume that's going to continue. And I noticed that Amazon says it's going to be donating more than 8,000 laptops to Seattle Public Schools. The latest analysis from the University of Washington suggests that parts of the state may have already hit their peak as of last Thursday.
Pretty compelling evidence that at least King County and Snohomish County have peaked, and the rest of the state not so, but put them together, that leads us to a more positive picture than we previously thought.
That's Dr. Chris Murphy. He's in charge of the modeling at UW School of Medicine.
We think it's a U.S. example now of the effectiveness of social distancing.
But he warns if people do ease up on social distancing that the pandemic's trajectory would change, and in his words, dramatically for the worse. So he also says their forecast is based on the assumption that social distancing remains in place until the end of May. Right now, our state's order runs through May 4th, so we'll have to see if UW's modeling here has any influence on the governor's decision a few weeks from now to see if he wants to extend the order anymore.
And as for why we hit the peak sooner than the model was expecting, it appears to be because fewer people went outside early on. And Dr. Murphy thinks that the deadly outbreak at the Life Care Center may have had something to do with that.
It really got the public's attention and led to, Amazon, Microsoft with, work from home recommendations, others following suit, some school closures earlier.
So the UW model also projects that the daily COVID-19 deaths will actually peak today before dropping to 18 deaths per day and then declining, hopefully, slowly from then on.
And the other bit of good news is that it also revises the state's estimated death toll down to roughly 630. Earlier models had projected about 1,400 people in the state were likely to die from COVID-19.
And UW says that the latest results are based on this massive infusion of new data. When they first had that projection of 1,400, they were relying on really limited information. And now that we have a lot of data from around the state and really around the world, the UW says it can paint a clearer and more accurate picture of how the virus should act going forward.
I had a feeling that something had vastly improved when I heard the governor was going to send 400 ventilators from the federal stockpile to New York and to other states. And the Hospital Association issued this statement: at this point, hospitals here are not experiencing the dire need of ventilators the way that New York is. Sending some of our ventilator supply where it was immediately needed seemed like the right thing to do.
That had to do with the fact that today, the 6th of April, we are expecting, the projections show that this will be the peak in terms of the death total. But last Thursday is when the state, it looks like, peaked out in terms of resources, beds, supplies that was needed. That was back on April 2nd.
Right. As a matter of fact, in terms of the pressure on hospital resources, we never came even close, according to the study. We had a need for about 1,000 beds. We had the capacity for 5,000 beds, so there have always been more than enough beds here. In terms of the daily death toll, which is a pretty grim statistic, but that's one of the ways you measure this, the highest daily death toll was recorded actually on March 27th when there were 24, and now we are down to 18 per day, and that is expected to dwindle until the latest model anyway says we will reach 0 deaths per day, which is what we've all been waiting for, on May 10th. Let's talk about Boeing, Chris. Boeing is not going to reopen on Wednesday, even though they originally were thinking about it. And what does that mean for workers who are waiting to be paid?
Yeah, that's going to be some tough decisions to be made, primarily for the machinists coming up this week, because that's when the 10 days of paid leave for those that cannot work from home is going to end. That's coming on Wednesday. As you had mentioned, the production shutdown is going on now indefinitely. About 30,000 employees are going to have a decision to make. I mean, they can use any combination of sick days or vacation time to keep getting paid while the plants are closed. But if they don't have any of that time accrued, they're probably going to have to look at unemployment benefits. That said, the unemployment office has been swamped, as we know, over new claims, so it could take a while for those benefits to kick in. Now, employees who have been working from home continue to do so. Employees will continue to receive their medical benefits during the shutdown, whether they are working or not. So that covers all 70,000 here in the state, including those 30,000 or so that cannot work from home. So that's a positive. They'll still get their medical benefits, but for a lot of those machinists, I know, especially the young guys and gals who don't have a lot of time accrued, they're going to face some pretty tough times coming up here starting Wednesday for those 30,000 workers in our state.
Now, do the additional unemployment benefits kick in for them at some point?
Well, they can. They can do a combination of unemployment, sick days, or vacation time, because technically the plant is being closed. And so under the guidelines, under the unemployment, they actually can do it, even though they haven't technically been furloughed or fired or things are laid off. So they can, because it's kind of the force majeure thing, that it's out of your hand. Unemployment has exceptions that they can file for that, even though they are still technically an employee of the company. They're just not getting paid.
Over the weekend, the CDC officially recommended that everyone wear a cloth face mask in public. Here's U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams.
The cloth face coverings recommended are not surgical masks or N95 respirators. Those are critical supplies that must continue to be reserved for healthcare workers.
And he still warns that droplets carrying the virus can make their way through a cloth mask. So keep up the 6 feet of distance in public spaces as much as you can.
Do not expect to see President Trump covering his mouth.
This is voluntary. I don't think I'm going to be doing it. I'm feeling good. I just don't want to be doing, I don't know, somehow sitting in the Oval Office behind that beautiful Resolute desk. The great Resolute desk. I think wearing a face mask as I greet presidents, prime ministers, dictators, kings, queens, I don't know, somehow I don't see it for myself. I just maybe I'll change my mind.
By the way, presidential nominee Joe Biden says he is going to wear a mask.
Well, of course, you can't have the two presidential candidates do the exact same thing.
That's right.
They have to be complete opposites.
Right.
Have you been out in public with a mask yet?
I have not. However, I think I'm going to at this point. The more I go out, the more I see them.
Yeah, take the plunge.
Yeah, exactly.
I did it on Saturday, went shopping, and I will be frank with you. The reason was because I saw people masking up in the parking lots. I said, okay, I'll grab I've got my sawdust mask that I use when I'm doing woodworking. So I put it on, felt perfectly comfortable walking through the thriftway. Some friends recognized me. We had a little conversation. Mask didn't even come up. So maybe that's just the new style when you're in public. We will be back tomorrow and every day after with a 10-minute rundown of the daily local news. You can subscribe to this podcast. You can also find our news coverage on mynorthwest.com or listen live at 97.3 FM.